the Joker, right? Batman's gonna kick your ass.
He's gonna have to go through you first.
These videos are not for children. If you're a children, then piss off.
Hey there, it's me, your least favorite YouTuber, Infuso. And I've previously talked about The Dark Knight Returns Part 1. So if you haven't seen that video, I highly suggest checking it out before watching this one. Because otherwise, you're gonna be all kinds of confused. Although, granted, due to the subject matter of this video, had you watched Part 1, you still might be really confused. But regardless, the link is in the description. Feel free to watch that first and come back here after. But as for the rest of you, let's just get right into it. So y'all remember when I said I really hope that Part 2 is on par with Part 1? I really enjoyed this, and I sincerely hope that Part 2 is on par with Part 1.
See, I did say that.
Very clever.
A lot of you guys have touted this as being even better than the first part. But I'm just gonna be real with y'all. I'm sorry, I don't see it. As a matter of fact, I feel like Part 2 is significantly worse than Part 1. That's not to say that it's necessarily bad, it's just not as good as Part 1. It's a lot more goofy and bizarre, but it's still trying to treat its material as if it was as legit as the first part. But once again, it's really not. There's a lot of strange choices here that kind of make me feel like Frank Miller was starting to lean closer toward All-Star Batman and Robin rather than Batman Year One. Like having Bruce go undercover as an elderly lady, lipstick mind control, whatever the fuck these two things are. The movie feels more like an exercise in testing my suspension of disbelief. And shortly into its runtime, it was already broken. And if I thought the last part was political, well, that's because it was, but man, I had no idea what Part 2 had in store for me. From President Ronald Reagan playing into the plot, to having a Nazi for a villain, constant talks of fascism, and the movie's depiction of stupid, bleeding heart liberals. Which aren't my words, they're Frank Miller's. Probably. Again, I'm not a political person. I don't really take overall sides. I take the side that makes sense to me in given situations. I don't believe in absolutes. If you go into anything saying that this is your guy and you will defend them no matter what, then clearly you've made up your mind before anybody's had anything to say. That is just my own perception. But it's very clear that this movie's message is that the left is loony. There's an emphasis put on responsibility and lack thereof. Having those who oppose Batman blame him for the crimes of all his villains, while claiming his villains are merely victims of Batman's own psychosis and narcissism, is completely ludicrous. I think that there could be some interesting commentary there, because that's a thought-provoking thought. Does Batman do more harm than good? Is his influence stopping more crimes than it's potentially starting? Does the media portraying a masked vigilante as a heroic icon play any part in all of these villains taking to the streets in their own homemade Comic-Con gear? These are some great questions that I think have been much better explored in various other Batman projects. But here it comes off as a little bit too satirical. Like the whole thing just comes off as parody. Sure, a claim could reasonably be made that Batman's prominence maybe on some levels enables all of these kooks. But at the end of the day, these villains are responsible for their own actions. Very few, if any, would argue that. Let alone the way the people in this movie try to argue that. Like, yes, the Joker is merely a victim of Batman and nothing more. The movie says he killed 600 people, but none of that is his own fault. Let's release him back into the wild and see what happens. You know, because Batman is the real bad guy. The message gets even further muddled when later on in the runtime, Batman himself says something that seems to imply he subscribes to that same theory.
All the people I've murdered by letting you live.
I never kept count.
I did.
So what was the point that was being made here? Was there even a point? I'm questioning it. Maybe you should have done that too when you were writing this. I mentioned before that Frank Miller clearly didn't like the left, but he's not above shitting on the right either. Like with his depiction of former President Ronald Reagan, where he's shown to be a complete bullshit artist. Or how he makes Superman a complete puppet of the law. A seemingly mindless drone that just follows whatever order he's given, rather than being a figure of hope and justice. It seems like Frank was venting his criticisms of both sides of the political spectrum, and he did so by mocking their most diehard extremists. Unfortunately, at times, it feels like it comes at the price of the story that's being told. And on top of that, the extremists are the only depiction of either side that is ever presented in these movies. And if Frank Miller is so diehard anti-extremism, then why does he have Batman team up with and utilize members of the mutant gang who are the very definition of the word extreme? I mean, I understand Batman's getting up there in age. His bones are quickly turning to dust and his muscles are slowly turning into soup. I get that the guy needs help. Hell, he was never above that before when he was at his peak and in his prime. My dude had a whole-ass Batman family that nowadays feels much more like a Batman extended family. So yeah, by no means would he be above this. But like, you know, I would think that he would vet some of these guys out. Not everyone deserves admission into the fight for the right. There are some who just don't belong. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But I feel like Batman wouldn't want just a bunch of husks who do the right thing because it's what they're told to do. He'd want people who do the right thing for the right reasons. These guys aren't following the old man's orders because they want to see some good in the world. They're doing it because they're mindless followers who think Batman is cool. Really, he just adopted the gang because he beat their boss. So I guess the mutants run under prison rules. I mean, Superman is shown to be in the wrong because he just follows orders, and yet Batman is now associating with a bunch of people who just mindlessly follow orders. Sometimes it's really confusing because I feel like there's things in this movie, and I would guess by extension the comic book that it's based on, though I would not know for sure. There are times where it feels like it's trying to make a point, but it seems like these points are counterproductive of their own narratives. I do like that the mutants jump from leader to leader and just go with whatever the current thing is. They change their motives and appearances to better suit whoever they're working for, which seems like an old man's take on kids these days, and the dangers of being a rebel without a cause. To be frank, no pun intended, I do think that there could be some validity to that. Some. I mean, yes, that also does come off as parody, but I'm accepting of that. That's not too egregious. I'm fine with the way that was done. Is it on the nose? Yes. Most things in Part 2 are. The movie succeeds in properly portraying Batman's hatred for guns and his appreciation for human life, even the worst of humanity. But unfortunately, it also makes Batman openly state that he needs to kill the Joker in order to stop him. Like this is his solution. And hey, look, I get it. He's done a lot of wrong. Maybe death truly is the only solution to stop this madman. As a wise alien once said, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. So taking one life to save 100 lives, or let's be honest, more likely 1 million lives, does seem moral and just. But I just don't think that that's a conclusion that Batman himself should come to. Even if he's older, even if he's running out of time, I just don't think Batman should openly state, oh yeah, gotta kill the clown. Gotta kill the clown. Should have done it years ago. Gotta kill the clown. I don't think my issue is with Batman trying to kill the Joker necessarily. I mean, I personally would prefer that he did not, because that does seem a little bit out of character. But there are ways to do a story like this and have it be reasonable. In The Killing Joke, I never minded that Batman allegedly killed the Joker at the end of it. As a matter of fact, in that telling of the tale, I welcomed it. But that's because it was almost impulsive. There wasn't a plan in place for Batman to end his life. If Batman does kill the Joker, it should be because in that one moment, Joker did something so terrible that he temporarily snapped. He did all he could think to do at that one instant. It definitely shouldn't be something that he thought over. Like, this shouldn't be premeditated. It should be instinctual. Also thought it was a little bit much to see Batman blatantly spit on Joker's corpse. That just didn't seem within reason for Batman. Even after everything that transpired between these two, It just seems so low class and improper for The Dark Knight. I'm not saying that Batman should hold a candlelight vigil. I'm not expecting him to take to YouTube with his own custom-made Joker tribute set to Kenny Rogers through the years. But like, just the disrespect there. It's gross. Come on, Bats. You're better than that. Or at least I thought you were. I know Frank Miller isn't. I will say that there are a lot of interesting things happening in the movie. Batman coming back an ancient relic to an ever-evolving world is a very, very interesting concept. His return to the cowl just so happened to coincide with the changing of the guard. Following James Gordon's retirement, a new commissioner with a new policy takes over the position. Commissioner Yendel doesn't seem to have the same fondness for Batman that Gordon once did. Although eventually she does come around to see his way of thinking. And it's a nice touch just watching history repeat itself. Just now for a new generation. In some ways, this feels like a remake of Batman Year One. The Commissioner opposes vigilantism, and then at the end of it is like, well crap, we kinda need this guy, don't we? Yeah, alright. Okay, we'll give him a pass. Though I don't think they'll be exchanging notes over coffee anytime soon, it is nice to see the new commissioner appreciate Batman the same way the previous one did. This Joker matches up to the character that I know in terms of motivations and having a bunch of funny one-liners. In terms of depicting the Clown Prince of Crime, this movie triumphs in direction. His obsession with Batman is still very much in effect. It even goes so far as to him speaking to him more as if they were past lovers rather than lifelong enemies. It's not an awful interpretation of the dynamic between these two at all. But outside of that, I hate everything about this character. His design, the performance of the actor, the sound of his voice. I'm just straight up not a fan. For me, this performance belongs in the low tier of Joker performances. There is a spot right next to Jared Leto's Joker from Suicide Squad and the Joker from Batman Dark Tomorrow. In case you're wondering, the seat over from that is actually the Joker from Young Justice. I'm sorry, Data. You've been great in a lot of things, this just wasn't one of them. But I look forward to seeing you in The Master Disguise Part 2. Despite him having an ill-fitting voice and a bland at best design, on a lot of levels, I do feel like this movie accurately provided the Joker experience. Remember in Part 1 when I said Carrie Kelly was underdeveloped? Well, that's all the development you're getting for her. Because she never really gets fleshed out. Her backstory never becomes crystal clear. Her reasonings for wanting to be Robin are never made entirely apparent. And character-wise, she's kind of a blank slate. It's sad because I actually want to like this character, but I just don't know enough about her. Considering that Frank Miller was writing, maybe he didn't really know a whole lot about her either. Look, the guy has definitely done some great things with Batman. And also some not so great things with Batman. That's a video for a different day. But let's just say his development and depiction of women in his comics was almost always very lacking. I'm really annoyed by this because I think voice performance-wise, Ariel Winter was my favorite out of anybody on the cast. She just doesn't have a whole lot to do. Instead, the heavy lifting goes to people who don't seem like they're right for the roles that they're in. So the whole thing is just very frustrating. Although, hey, wait a second. I'm just putting something together here. I don't know if it's true or false, but this design, but Carrie Kelly, is she why Dick Grayson has the design that he does in the Lego Batman movie? Because he is the spitting image of her in that. Spitting image is a phrase, Bruce. Unneeded. Unnecessary. I do like the dynamic between Superman and Batman, and their interactions almost saved this movie for me. Almost. To me, this is what Batman v Superman should have been. Because a fight between these two should be about so much more than just two jacked up dudes in pajama going punch for punch. It's a fight of ideologies. It's a fight of two people who live for justice, who want to do the right thing, but have to fight each other to do it. Because their perception of what's right not only differ, but completely conflict. Batman listens to his moral compass, while Superman listens to the authorities. I like that. I like the compare and contrast that can be made between these two. And I love that even when they're fighting, even when Supes has been given very specific orders on what to do with Batman, he still spends his time in that fight trying to get Batman to stand down and to reason with him. I will say, this movie doesn't cast a fantastic light on Superman, but it also doesn't throw him obliviously into the realm of darkness. While he's kicking Bruce Wayne's badass, he still begs and pleads with him to stop fighting, showing compassion and concern even when he's just been struck by a kryptonite arrow. As Batman's laying in the final blows and basically gloating to Clark that he's defeated him, Clark's attention is primarily on Bruce's irregular heartbeat, which I think really highlights the Superman that I know. This line at the end of the movie too.
Were you a friend?
I think so. I honestly couldn't say.
Sounds about right.
Chef's kiss. I think it's the perfect portrayal of Clark and Bruce's mutual respect and obviously unspoken friendship. Even those closest to Batman still don't really know where they stand with him. That's not by mistake, that's by design. The guy takes being a man of mystery to a completely different level. Can we just talk about how one-armed Ollie still kicks ass? I mean, he's not cracking jokes, and that hurts. Because Ollie's signature sarcastic wit has always been my personal favorite part of the character, as it's the part that I personally have always identified with. But you know, now that he's old and has no hair on the top of his head, I find myself identifying with other parts of the character instead. Truthfully speaking, while there were a lot of great moments and interesting premises in Part 2, it still failed to live up to the greatness of Part 1 for me. I found this movie to be mostly disappointing with a slew of lows, and a couple of highs that feel like they were more in place with the first half of the story. So overall, yeah, I could have left at Part 1 and been a whole lot happier. But I am glad that I finally got to see this in full, and now I understand what everybody's been talking to me about for years. So does The Dark Knight Returns live up to the hype? The answer is very simply, yes and no. The Dark Knight Returns Part 2, even more so than Part 1, is a mixed bag. There's a lot that I liked, and there's a lot that I didn't. Overall, for the most part, when looking back on these two movies and seeing them as one full one, I think it just about evens out for me. There is just as much good as there is bad, and vice versa. So now that I've watched both parts, I gotta say, it's pretty good. Not great, I don't think that I loved it the way a lot of other people seem to love it. I think that there's a lot of flaws in it that a lot of people don't let on to, and it does impact my enjoyment of the final product. I don't like the art designs, I don't like a lot of the voices, I think that the messages get muddled throughout, but putting all those aside, I do genuinely kinda like this. But that's just my take. Let me know yours in the comment section below, and if you enjoyed this video and want to see more Batman content coming up, let me know in the same comment section by saying, V, you're an all-star Batman content creator. Let's just say that that comment isn't nearly as complimentary as it sounds. With all that being said, I was your least favorite YouTuber, V Infuso, and I thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next one.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.